Welcome back. We had a chance to look at another boss on the PTR, and we're bringing you a short video of it. The encounter is called Iron Quan, and during the fight you will face the boss himself, Iron Quan, and his 3 Quillen champions. This is a 4-phase fight. During phases 1, 2, and 3, you fight Iron Quan while he's riding each of his Quillen champions, and during phase 4, after you've killed all 3 of his Quillen in the previous phases, you fight Iron Quan alone. In phase 1, he rides a Quillen called Rorschach the Molten Flare, which predictably enough has quite a lot of fire-based mechanics. There's a stacking debuff applied to the tanks, which requires a tank switch. Rorschach gains energy throughout the phase. You want to avoid having him reach maximum energy because if he does so, he casts a very damaging attack. To dump the boss's energy, you need to group up in groups of at least 3 players. And when you do that, Rorschach detects this group of players and throws a spear at it, dealing a lot of damage to those players and stacking a debuff on them. So what you need to do, and what we did, was we formed 3 groups of people and we stayed spread out, and then one group stacked up, took a couple of spear throws, then spread out again, another group stacked up, and we went in a rotation like this to keep the boss's energy under control. Also, you can see these fire lines on the floor. They're just, something you need to avoid as you would expect. We're just going to speed the video up a little bit here until Rorschach dies. The second Quillen is called Quetzal the Stormcaller, and during this phase there are a lot of lightning-based attacks. One of the mechanics during this phase is that random raid members get stunned by a sort of storm cloud and they deal lightning damage to players around them, and someone else has to run to them and click them to drag them out of the cloud. This wasn't actually working very well, or wasn't working at all on the PTR, and players who got stunned like that essentially just had to die and be resurrected. Now, at this point of the fight, an ability called Windstorm is supposed to take place, which is essentially a giant tornado lightning storm where you need to run around avoiding tornadoes. It didn't happen on this particular attempt because it was just bugged out, but we're showing you footage from a different pull. We're not exactly sure what the best way of handling this storm was, but we managed to get through it relatively unscathed a few times. Anyway, in addition to that, you can see more lines on the ground that need to be avoided during this phase as well, and that's about it with this Quillen. We're going to speed up the rest of the phase again. Here you can see the third and final Quillen, called Damren the Frozen Sage. Right off the bat you can notice one of his abilities where he shields himself on 2 sides, and you can't do damage to him from those sides. It's just a fairly standard mechanic that we've seen so far in Mist of Pandaria. The lines on the ground from the previous phase still persist and they still hurt quite a lot. Also, as you can probably tell, we're down 1 player by this point. As you can see, there are different lines on the floor during this phase as well, so nothing new there. And the boss's only other ability during this phase is that he stuns a random player and then does frost damage to everyone around him after a few seconds. This is probably the easiest of the 3 phases, assuming that it was functioning properly and as it's meant to on the PTR. We're speeding this one up as well because it took a very long time. Here, after exactly 10 minutes, the boss enraged, but we were still quite far from killing it. This is the only attempt where we actually got this far into the fight, so we didn't really have any kind of practice whatsoever. What happens here is that after you kill the final Quillen, you have to face Iron Quan alone, and he has a few abilities of his own that we didn't really get to experience. This feels like a final burn phase because he has a stacking self buff, and the enrage timer is probably going to be bearing down quite heavily on you. And that's it for this boss. I hope you found the video helpful. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to be notified of our new videos.